So we have a sequence of Mishnayot in the 4th chapter, which begin with a phrase like, well, for example, in the 4th Mishnah, Mishi yashav baderech, someone who was sitting on the road. Or in the 5th Mishnah, Mishi yashen baderech, someone who slept on the road. And now, as we move into the 7th Mishnah, we're getting towards the end of this chapter, we're going to have Mishi bavaderech, someone who is coming on the road. And we're coming, by the way, out of unconsciousness into consciousness. So far, we've dealt with situations where someone might not have been exactly conscious of what was happening when Shabbat came in, either because maybe they were asleep when Shabbat came in, or whether they didn't know where exactly they were in relation to the boundaries of the town. Or maybe in the very first Mishnah in the chapter, they were forcibly removed from the boundaries of the town by Gentiles or by some kind of psychological illness. So we've been dealing, if you like, with involuntary or unseeing presence outside the Tchum. And now we're going to come into consciousness. Misha Bavaderech, someone who came on the road. And he sees it's getting dark. And he recognized a tree or a fence. He knows where he is. Shvitati tachtav lo amar klum. He recognizes this is where he is, and he sees a tree or a fence, and he says, may my Shabbat place be under it. And the Mishnah says, hey, lo amar klum, hasn't said anything. We'll explore this in a bit more detail in a sec, but let's just think for a minute why he might want to do that. Well, let's say, for example, we're 4,000 amot outside town. We can't get to town. On the other hand, if we could see a tree or a fence or some kind of marker halfway between where we are now and town, we could say, let my Shabbat center be under that tree, and then I can walk 2,000 amot to the direction of the tree and another 2,000 amot onwards, and then I'll be somewhere safe for Shabbat. So we can see why we might want to do that. And mysteriously, the Mishnah says, no, lo amar klum. And then it comes back. He might say, shvitati beikro, let my Shabbat place be at its root. He's a little bit more precise. He doesn't just say ilan or gada. He doesn't say shvitati tachtav, my Shabbat place is under it. And remember, by the way, a tree can be a big object. A tree can be much bigger than the 4 amot, which we think of a human as possessing. Under a tree, that's a big space. So he says, shvitati beikaro, at its root. That seems to work. He can walk from the place where it stands to its root 2,000 cubits. And then another 2,000 cubits from its root to his house. Thus, nimtza malech mi shechashecha arbat alafim ama. That way, he can actually walk 4,000 cubits after dark. So this is something with intention. And the rabbis seem to be going out of their way to explain to him how he can get safe by Shabbat. And maybe we can understand this right, because I don't think in the time of the Mishnah, being stuck out in the field for Shabbat with possibly dangerous robbers or Gentiles or whoever around, Roman soldiers who might kill you, I don't think that would have been a very pleasant proposition. Now, what if he doesn't recognize anything? Im einomakir. What if he doesn't see anything? Or she einovaki bahalacha. Maybe he doesn't know the halacha. Maybe he doesn't know that he's supposed to do this. Fascinating, by the way, that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, when he's compiling the Mishnah, is thinking about situations where someone doesn't know the halacha he needs to know. Fascinating that they're bringing this stuff in. Ve'amar, and he says, Shvitati bimkomi, let my present position, let my place be my Shabbat place. Shvitati bimkomi. Zachalo makomo alpayim amal chol luach. his position gains him a right of movement of 2,000 units in any b'chol ruach, in any direction. Agulot, divrei Rabbi Hanania ben Antigonos, in a circle, a 2,000 amah circle, according to Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos. And by the way, we've always talked so far about circles. I mean, we've seen all these diagrams of circles I've been building for you on the source sheet. But it's not the last word. V'chachamim omrim, merubaot, the distance, it's square. Ketavla. Look at a beautiful, beautiful, this word must be cognate with table. I don't know. I don't think it comes from the Latin, because the Latin for table is different. Maybe it comes from Greek, and certainly there are more Greek words than Latin words in the Mishnah. Ketavla merubat, like a square tablet. Kadei sheyehei niskar la zaviot, so that he can gain the area of the corners. Let's look at what we're talking about. Look, so the Rabbi Hanina ben Antigonos is talking about a classic circle. The rabbis are talking, actually, I'm sorry about the large size of this image. I just didn't understand how to shrink it. But the rabbis are talking about a square with the circle circumscribed in it. So the extra space in the corners that we're getting is the difference between, a 2,000 amot in each direction is 4,000 amot in total. So the square must be 16,000 amot, and the circle, it's going to be pi. It's going to be pi d, so it'll be somewhere like 12,500 amot. So we're getting a good 4,000 square amot just from making use of the corners of the corners around the circle. And there is a pasuk for it, by the way. There's a pasuk in Bamidbar, when the cities of refuge are being marked out. And the derivation of this is an incredibly complex Gzera Shava in Eruvin. I didn't want to bring you the Gzera Shava itself, because it's about a page on Eruvin, or practically it seems like a page. It's very complex. But in essence, this passage says that we measure for the cities of refuge a square 2,000 amot outside town in 4 directions: east, south, west, and north, with the town in the center. And that's the pasture for their towns. It's very interesting that the cities of refuge have got green belt around them, as if they were thinking about ecology or pasture or green issues already in that time. And that's how we derive from the Torah this idea that the Shabbat space is actually square, not round. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Let's have a look at the principle. This is what they said. This is, in other words, now just going back to this person who establishes. Maybe we'll just go back to the Mishnah for a sec, just to remind ourselves. He says, let my place be my Shabbat space. If he just says, let my place be my Shabbat place, he gets 2,000 amot, i.e., he establishes his Shabbat place with his feet. And this is an innovation, because until now, we've been talking about establishing a Shabbat space by putting an eruv there, by taking, for example, a piece of bread and putting it out. And we discussed, for example, in the last chapter, what happens if the eruv is eaten by a fox, or if stones fall on it, or if it's burnt, or if it's stolen or destroyed or rolls, or something happens to it. We've always been talking about what we do with some food, which is put out to mark the eruv. And here, the man on the road is saying, I just establish it with my feet. I don't need food. And this is essentially the context of this Mishnah. This is what they said. He'ani ma'arev baraglav. A poor man makes his eruv with his feet. And perhaps there are a lot of discussions about this in the commentators, what a poor man is. But I think there's some agreement that someone on the road who doesn't necessarily have any food with him is considered poor, at least for the purpose of this halacha. And Rabbi Meir says, Amar Rabbi Meir, Anu ein lanu ela ani. We only have a poor man, i.e., we only apply this halacha to a poor man. As far as Rabbi Meir is concerned, the essence of eruv is bread, just as we've been talking for the last few days. And this facility that we're making for a poor man or a man on a journey or a woman on a journey, this facility that we're making the leniency. But that's not the only way of looking at it. Let's have a look at Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Echad ani ve'echad ashir lo amru ma'arvin so I just need to uncover my screen for a sec. Lo amru ma'arvin befat elel hakel el ha'ashir shelo yetzeh v'yarev baraglav. Rabbi Yehuda says the rule is the same actually for rich and poor. The essence of the essence of the eruv isn't bread, just like Rabbi Meir says. The essence is actually feet. Lo amru ma'arvin b'fat elel hakel el ha'ashir. The reason that we can make an eruv with bread is to make life easy for the rich man. Shelo yetzeh v'yarev baraglav. So he shouldn't have to go out with his feet and make an eruv. So in other words, as far as Rabbi Meir is concerned, the essence of the halacha is bread, and we allow feet to be lenient for poor people. As far as Rabbi Yehuda is concerned, the essence of the eruv is feet, and we only allow bread to be lenient for a rich person, because of course a rich person, if we're dealing with bread, you don't need feet at all. A rich person can give the bread to a servant or to a slave and can say, please go and take this to such and such a place and deposit my eruv in such and such a place for me. And of course, we learned a bit about the use of a emissary to establish the eruv, I think back in the second chapter of Eruvin, or certainly a couple of chapters back. So that's the difference between these two views. Rabbi Yehuda says the essence of the eruv is feet, and there's a leniency for the rich. Rabbi Meir says the essence of the eruv is bread, and there's a leniency for the poor. And I think we go according to Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim.